Hello everybody, welcome back to Clear Surf Financial Education. So today I want to discuss what I see going on here. I think at the beginning of 2021, you're starting to see a little pullback in the big tech, and I think that's justified in my opinion. And the reason being, they've been on such a tremendous run, but not only that, you're starting to see big tech start to, in my opinion, overreach their bounds. And what I mean by that, I found an article here that I was reading this morning, which I thought was pretty interesting. Whenever Facebook and Twitter ban Donald Trump's platform, they're not allowing him to speak on their platforms. So in my opinion, I think this is very dangerous. And I found an article here talking about how some other world leaders are feeling the same way. Regardless of whether you're a Democrat or Republican, that doesn't matter to me. The fact is that these tech giants now that are run by billionaires, I think Zuckerberg, last I saw, was worth $44 billion. So now you're allowing a billionaire to determine who gets to speak to the public by pulling them down. And obviously it's not just my opinion. I found an article here that's talking about how German Chancellor Angela Merkel said that the ban on Twitter's ban on Trump is problematic. And for her to say that, that says something, because she doesn't like Trump at all. They've had their differences from day one. Goes on here to talk about the other folks here. The French government agreed with Merkel. It goes on here talking about how the European People's Party said that big tech is overstepping their boundaries, and this is a problem for democracy in general across the world, not just in the United States. And even one of the other people that oppose the Russian ruler, Vladimir Putin, his opposition leader mentioned that this is also very problematic, along with Mexico. So I could go on and on. Fact of the matter is, I think those firms are going to be under pressure. And the reason is, like I say, it does not matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. If you enjoy freedom, you should be pretty unhappy that they can pick and choose who they pull off there. Because I remember 6 months ago or so, that you had some Democrats saying go out and disrupt people's dinners, go out and do whatever you can do to disrupt Republicans. But nothing, no one's accounts were taken down for inciting violence there. Get in their face, disrupt them, do whatever you can. Nothing was done there. That's problematic. So why I bring this up? I'm going to go into more with how it affects the market, because my channel talks about investing, personal finance, and entrepreneurship. But I needed to start off with what this article is talking about. How this is very problematic and not just my opinion. And I'm going to go into an article I found here, which I thought was very interesting. It talked about the two dichotomies right now. And you can look at the world in two different ways. There's an economy out there that's just rolling along. Since COVID happened, everyone was forced to work from home, as many of us are aware. But you've got people that were able to work from home, and they're moving right along. And then you've got those people, that 10 million people that still don't have jobs. So a quarter of those jobs are lost or still gone. So 250,000 people don't have work. Now, where the comparisons to this, we don't have anything like this. It's been 100 years since there's a pandemic. So the nearest thing we can look at is what happened during the Great Depression. So I actually did some research, and I found some information that talked about this, how we haven't seen anything like this. But during the Great Depression, nobody had any money. They were talking, they would love to invest in their future, but nobody had any money. So now we're in a situation where we've got people that are working from home, still collecting paychecks, still have their benefits. Matter of fact, their stock portfolios are higher. And even those that are retirees are still doing fine because the market's up and they're on a fixed income. They're going higher. So what has happened here, I thought, was very interesting in this opinion. Now this piece shows, I'm going to look at my screen a little bit because I want to show these numbers accurately. So basically saying that between March and November of 2020, there's been Americans made $1 trillion more than March to November of 2019. Think about that, $1 trillion more in the economy, yet we're going through this pandemic. Now, obviously, a ton of that came from stimulus money, increased unemployment benefits. So for those things, it's allowing some people on the bottom there just to kind of stay afloat, while people that still have their jobs, the people that can work from home, if they're using a computer, instead of going out and using their back or have to be somewhere else for hospitality or leisure, those folks are definitely having some problematic situations. So I thought it was very, very interesting showing the stark difference in the economy. So we had these bailout checks of $1,200 back in the spring, and now we just got another $600. now that Biden is in there and it looks like the Democrats have control of the Senate, they very well could print more money. But as I've mentioned many times before, printing money is not always going to be the answer, because you're not really targeting, by printing more money, you're not really targeting people that need it the most. We need to get back to full employment, because if we get back to full employment, that's truly going to help the overall economy even more so than these checks. We're just a shot in the arm for a very limited time for a few people. So with that being said, let me skip down here. I want to go on here and show you, so back during 2009 when we had the financial crisis, they put together $1 trillion package under Obama, and people couldn't believe that they were going to try to do that. Well, they just did $3 trillion in the last, less than a year. $3 trillion. That is just unbelievable amount of money pumped into the system. But again, you're starting to see this disparity between the haves and the have-nots, as I've mentioned before in other videos. And it's all going to come to roost eventually. But interesting quote here, I thought, is basically adjusted for inflation. The amount of money in these two stimulus plans, adjusted for inflation, is more than we spent fighting World War II for 4 years. Let that sink in. 4 years of fighting World War II, we've spent that much in less than a year just trying to make sure we don't go into a deep recession, which we haven't. And we want to avoid what happened during the Great Depression, because obviously it lasted better than 10 years. So we don't want to see that. But at the same token, we're taking a much different perspective now. What this means for your money is eventually inflation is going to rear its head. It has to at some point in time. Rates are going to have to go up. They can't keep printing money forever. So getting back to my research here. So looking at the debt side of the equation, thought this was pretty interesting. As I mentioned, all these checks going out. So look at how it breaks down. Credit card debts. So what are people doing with the money? Credit card debts are down $100 billion over the last year. So this is pretty astounding, thinking about $100 billion paid off in debt. So a lot of people that didn't need that money use it to pay down debt because things were closed. You couldn't go to restaurants or bars or movie theaters. You couldn't travel. So people that had the money, looks like they put it down on the debt. Those that did need it obviously bought groceries. But we just saw here a 10% fall in credit card balances. We have less credit card balances today than we did in 2007. Also, mortgage refinance doubled. So people are locking in rates now. So get this, they looked at current rates being advertised, 30-year mortgage at 2.3%. So basically someone can buy a $500,000 home and have a payment of around $1,700. So put that in perspective, during the financial crisis in 2007, because interest rates were higher, you could only buy a $300,000 home to get that same mortgage payment. And back in the mid-90s, you could afford a $210,000 house with the current interest rates. So what we're seeing here is these low interest rates are allowing people to have the ability to have income, to pay down debts, get super low mortgage rates that they never thought they could even dream of having just a few years ago. And then you have the other side of the equation where so many people are still waiting for this pandemic to be over so they can get back to their work and get back to their jobs. So thought that was pretty interesting. Now, also, I'm going to look at the savings rate here because this was pretty astonishing as well. Savings rates, during the pandemic, when it first happened, March and April, savings rates shot up to 34%. Since then, they've fallen back to 14%. The average is 7%. So the average is 7% savings, shot to 34%, tells you that people were worried this pandemic was going to last a lot longer than it did. And they weren't sure how long it was going to last, so they started saving money, those that could afford to do so. All right. So getting back to the references of how this thing is going to play out, you have all this pent-up demand. The last time we have any kind of pent-up demand of this nature was after World War II. So if you look at the numbers, during the 40s, you had 2 million homes were built between 1940 and 1945. And then between 1945 and 50, after the war was over, 7 million homes were built. You had the largest number of people going out and buying appliances and gas-propelled lawnmowers and such. So you saw those huge backups. So I do think we're going to see that. When people get back on their feet, they're going to start spending money again when they have the money. And those that haven't lost a job, they're going to continue probably paying down debt just to be safe. I wouldn't be surprised if that savings rate stays elevated But at this point in time, it's nice to see that people are actually saving, those that have the money. But it does bring back this whole scenario I said early on, the two economies. The economies of those that have their jobs and have kept on working from home, and those that can't because their business has been closed or they've got limited hours, who are just suffering through this. Just a very interesting point. How I'm going to bring this full circle is when I mentioned early on about the danger of having the media or a couple people dictating who can speak and who can't speak. I thought this was very interesting. So this point, let me just find it here. Getting back to bring this full circle, why I brought that up earlier on about the media having so much control over who gets to speak on their platform and what is threatening and what is not. There have been plenty of things that have been threatening. We had comedians that were doing skits of cutting off the president's head and holding it up during a skit, but they weren't removed from their platform. So this is very, very dangerous. This is why. This Benedict Evans nailed this years ago when he said the internet exposes people to new viewpoints. The angrier people get that different viewpoints exist. So what's happening here is, before when you lived in a little town or city and everybody went to the same schools and worked at the same buildings and had the same thought processes for the most part, they didn't see what was going on. Now you get to see 2.6, 2.3 billion, 2.5 billion people on Facebook showing you where they go to vacation, what clothes they wear, what their political opinions are, and they may not be the same as your political opinion. So now we've got this disparity. It's a very slippery slope where we've got people that have very different opinions, very angered at one another, but now we've got these people controlling the social media platforms deciding who's going to get cut off their accounts. I think, for one, this is very, very dangerous. And this is also why I started the video by saying I think these tech companies are going to be in for some regulation coming up, because the Democrats might enjoy right now Trump being cut off from his platform, but I can promise you it's not going to stop with him. No one's going to stop with just one person or one thing. And I don't think half the country, who obviously didn't vote for Joe Biden or didn't want him in office, are going to sit back and say, sure, we'll keep using your platform. We'll keep doing exactly what you tell us to do as long as we have access to your platform. So with that being said, I'm going to wrap it up. I just think we're moving down a very slippery slope, very dangerous for a democracy to go down this way. So I think you're going to see some regulations, and when that happens, you're going to see a stock market pull back. So, but with that being said, long-term investor, I've mentioned this many times, stay long. There is $1 trillion in cash sitting in checking accounts right now at the last check. 1 trillion. So on pullbacks, more than likely, regulation pullbacks, we're still going to be going higher. I still think we're going to be higher 5 years down the road. So with that being said, stay focused long-term, stay positive, and just remember, your opinion's not the only one out there. Take care.